No, it's
Okay, so we're
Dr.
gonna.
Cook, the manager doing something.
So we are going to get into conflict management. Any, one other thing before I forget it. If anybody owes me money, I'll take it. Okay. Anytime, this week, next week, try to not get behind on that as well. It'll help you. Okay. Conflict resolution, conflict management. Any questions or comments since our, in the last two lectures anybody might have?
I run from a lot of conflict.
You finding that out?
Yep.
How's it make you feel?
I don't pay attention to it, so good. No, I just realized, hearing the last lecture about the different types of management styles and just, being around the people that I'm around weekly, seeing, okay. And, we just got done planning a youth event, and it happened last night. But just seeing, there's seven different personalities around the table trying to make decisions, and plus everybody else. And so I just saw a lot of, a lot of the people who, would take a step back, and then the people who speak up their opinions that's what we did. And so just
Was that group I saw on Facebook?
yes.
I can tell you who was speaking up and who was holding back, but I won't. Okay.
You can.
Yeah, exactly.
It was.
But it was it went beyond those seven people too, just our leaders and things like that. But I just keep seeing this, even in my household, seeing because you were saying that our conflict
Style.
comes from home. And so just seeing it at home too, wow, that makes so much sense.
It comes from home, but it doesn't mean you function like the people at home.
Yeah.
It means you fit in
Right.
to everybody else's style, right?
Yeah.
And either and a lot of times it's because they are maybe a strong style that you tend to avoid.
But and too, at home, I deal with conflict one way, and then workplace, you would say I deal with it completely different. At home, my opinions are very much heard, but in the workplace, whatever you guys want. So that was funny to realize too this week. I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Okay, good.
I find that I don't have a lot of conflict. I solve a lot of problems. A lot of problems at work, but I wouldn't know if I would qualify it as conflict.
Yeah.
In other words, someone calls me with an issue. All right, well, let's do this, this, and this. Would you consider that? Because I'm having a hard time filling out the journal.
That's not necessarily conflict, but
right.
but their response to your way of doing it can produce conflict.
Well, that probably doesn't happen until the phone hangs up.
Okay.
So I guess my issue is I've got 3 entries.
Yeah, I feel the same way where I'm having a hard time figuring out. I think because I'm very optimistic, so I'm having a hard time justifying what's conflict and what's not. Because to me, I'm conflict is, am I getting in a verbal thing with someone? And I feel like that's happened a lot, and so then it's hard. Even though I'm sure there is things, but it's hard for me to justify what conflict is and what isn't.
Okay, so okay, good. Let's talk about it. There can be inner conflict that isn't verbalized.
Yeah.
In other words, this was a conflict because I didn't want all that cream, okay, because that's calories. And so I could have argued and made her start all over, and she would have. But I was getting late, and I didn't do it, and so I almost, on the way out, I almost threw it away. That's an inner conflict because it wasn't the way I wanted it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So there can be inner conflict that's not even verbal. As an example, I had inner conflict last Tuesday. I was thinking about it this morning. The reason I was thinking about it this morning is I looked at my schedule for this week and I thought, oh, this Tuesday's much better than last Tuesday. But here was my conflict. In reality, it wasn't a conflict with anybody. It was that I just felt conflicted within because of all those things I had to do. The first thing was I got up, as an example, I knew I was going to have to get up Thursday morning and start rendering these videos and sending out these emails, etc. Because on Wednesdays I get up at 4:30 in the morning on Wednesday and I head to Sacramento. So I knew I was going to have to get up Tuesday morning and get these things rendered because I was supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. Now, I didn't have to be. I could have not come at 9 o'clock, but I like seeing you guys and other people. And so I knew I had to get up early to get that started. Then I was going to have to do that. And then when I got home, I had to make a phone call to a student at one of the other schools because she was having problems with her research class. She's a graduate student. She was having problems with the research class. So I had set that up for 10:30. Knowing that at 11:15 I start teaching for another school online. Knowing that right after that, which was supposed to end at 2 o'clock, at 2:30 I had another meeting online with some people. And my point was there was no conflict with anybody, but it was inner conflict because I realized I had all these deadlines and all these things that had to be done. So that's a conflict. Yeah. And how did I deal with it? I could have dealt with it by not doing some of them, by shirking them. But I did them. I did them on time. I got them done. And at the end, I thought, well, that wasn't so bad. But it felt like it was bad. So I had inner conflict, even though it was not outer conflict. Does that help, Kaylee? Understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. Sometimes it's it can be an inner conflict because you don't have any conflicts to write down.
Yeah, and I think too, I didn't necessarily, not that I don't, I guess I do consider inner conflict, but not having like a resolution, like where it's just like I don't know if I have a resolution, so I don't know if it's like, so I guess if I don't I get a hard time justifying that as conflict because it's not like something that was like worked out and solved or anything. It's just like a frustration I have with somebody or something like that where I'm like, oh,
but sure it is. That's a conflict. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean that has to be one of the three that you expand on, but it is a conflict. Okay, you have a frustration with somebody. I mean, it could be something around that table last night that bothered you in for some reason. That's a conflict. Even if you didn't get into it with anybody, it's a conflict. And I think we have to realize that there are conflicts that are not actual verbalized events.
I guess for an avoider, that probably happens a lot.
Sure.
Ones that aren't like verbalized.
Sure. I mean, let's talk about what we talked about earlier. It's a conflict if you have work due and haven't done it. Right? That's a conflict because it's going to cause issues down the road. Okay. Someone else. Yes.
About the exam, when we do take it, is it going to be in class or bring it back?
This one's going to be in class. Yeah. Usually they are, but once in a while we have a class that's so content heavy, like hermeneutics, that we're, well, that is, you don't have a final in that anyway, do you? So, yeah, okay.
Is it like, because like on my notes, I'm like writing and highlighting what you say is going to be on the exam. So are we going to be like allowed to look at our notes and refer to that during the exam?
No.
Or just memorize?
Next week I'm going to give you a study guide.
Okay.
And some of the things on that study guide will be on the exam. So that's what you'll use to focus your study. Okay? But you will take it in class the 5th week. Okay. Anyone else?
Kind of similar to your coffee conflict. I had a conflict with McDonald's.
Oh, yeah.
I went there to get lunch and I got like a chicken sandwich, some large order fries and a drink. And they gave me my bag and I looked in the bag and I thought I saw the chicken sandwich box. And then when I got back to the interim outfit, it was chicken nuggets and large order fries, and I got my right drink. But it was an internal conflict for me because, like you said, it's not what I wanted. And I realized that in a lot of situations, that I got the wrong order. I just kind of went with it. There was a while ago where I wanted like a normal sandwich and they put everything on it. Even though it's not a huge problem, it's not what I wanted, but I took it anyways.
Well, see, that's that avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, you need to be able to go up and say, this was not made the way I asked for it. Okay. And a lot of people can't do that. Huh?
Daniel, you're a good jerk.
Do it nicely.
Yeah, you don't have to do it. Yeah, it's exactly.
See, that's my problem. I'm not afraid to confront, but I can't do it nicely.
Well, that's where you need to grow.
Yeah.
You know?
Go in.
As an example, bringing this up, I have a problem with that because I'll confront people that I'm ordering from or whatever, and we'll drive away, and Janie will say, "You made them feel terrible," and I'll say, "Why? The way you did it." I said, "I was just being honest," and so.
For sensitive customer service workers, I don't appreciate people are not honest. Are they honest when
The two ones.
they're too honest? Because then I'm like, I go into the break room and I'm like crying. But where do I want to go?
Well, yeah, and see, I mean, I realize that has to be a problem with my demeanor because my wife keeps telling me that. Okay, but I don't feel it. I didn't mean it in a
Bad way.
She does.
I just, but yet it is a conflict because it causes, as an example, I don't think I've told you guys this, but, and we're just sort of revving our engines here for a little while, trying to get our minds around this. A number of years ago, and I've used this in sermons before, but a number of years ago, somebody called me, a company called me, a woman called me from a company, and they were trying to charge me for something that it was not right. I mean, it was, I don't remember even now what it was, but it was like I hadn't ordered it or whatever. And so she called and she was getting on me in a sense, wasn't getting on me, but was requiring me to pay it or whatever. And I finally just told her, I don't know what's the matter with you. And I just told her and said, and I slammed the phone down. And I heard the Lord say, that was a real Christian thing to do. Especially since she knew I was a preacher.
Oh, no.
But it just ticked me off. I'd had it too many times from that company. But the Holy Spirit said, I want you to call her back and apologize.
Oh.
And I said, I don't want to. And then he told me to call her back. I said, Lord, I could hear the other operators in the background. There's this whole bank of people in this room. I would never even get the same woman back again. But he kept on me until finally I just called the number back. And this lady answers, and I said, I don't even know how to go about this. I said, but I was just talking to somebody there, and I didn't talk to them in the right way. And I said, I'm sure you don't even know who it was, but I'm just trying to find out if I could talk to the person again. And the lady said, I think she's sitting right next to me. She hands the phone to her. And so I just said to her, ma'am, I want to apologize. Number one, I don't owe that money. And I was frustrated, but I know you're just doing your job. You're paid to call people for your company. And I did not treat you correctly, and I want to apologize for the way in which I responded to you. And I'll never forget her words. And when she said it, I almost started crying. She said, oh, that's okay. It's not the worst I'll hear today. And I thought, oh my goodness. So my point is, the way we deal with people causes conflict. And sometimes we don't even realize it. And as I'm talking about that, with the way my wife says, sometimes I come across to people, she told me, she said, our daughters, they hated to bring boys around because, and I thought, well, that's okay. I mean, I don't mind that one, you know, that, no problem, you know, and your problem, you know, but my point is, that is a conflict, whether I see it as one or not. What does it do? It causes conflict with the other people. It causes conflict with my wife. And in reality, it causes conflict with God. Okay? So sometimes we create conflict and don't even realize it. Right? So you're in customer service?
Yeah.
Where at? Face to face or on phones?
Face to face and then
Yeah. Okay. And I'm saying this because I don't know you very well, but I would assume your feelings are on your shoulder to begin with. Am I right? So that creates conflict, right? I'm not saying that doesn't mean you aren't treated incorrectly, but sometimes you probably feel like you're treated incorrectly when you're really even not. And then we're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. You see, I mean, and so we have to realize that these things are part of our nature and part of the way we were raised. Okay. And so I really think we end up having more conflicts than we probably realize. Okay. Anyone else? No? Sometimes we have inner conflicts with people because of our perceptions. And what you perceive to be true is true to you, whether it's true or not. And we need to realize that perceptions can lie to us. And we need to, what's the way to deal with that? Just confront our perceptions. Talk to people about what we're feeling. We don't say, you don't like me. We say, I feel like there's something between us. And if I'm mistaken, I need to know that. But if I'm not, if I've ever done anything to harm you, would you please tell me what it is? And what does that do? It puts it out on the table. We're talking about conflict resolution. But some of us hate conflict so much we don't even want to go there. Okay? Because we're afraid they will tell us they don't like us. At least we know, right? Anyone else before I get started here today? Okay, I want to go a little further and let's see. Let's talk about, as we start tonight, let's talk about what actions display unhealthy anger management. What actions display unhealthy anger management? There's healthy anger management and there's unhealthy anger management. Okay? And we can have unhealthy anger management and not be made known to people, or they don't see it. But there are certain actions that display unhealthy anger management. And the first one is repression. Repression. If authority figures have taught us that anger is an unacceptable emotion, what are we going to do with it? Stuff it. If authority figures have taught us that anger is an unacceptable emotion, we'll stuff it. But what happens when you stuff it? Doesn't get resolved. What else happens?
It's worse.
It eventually comes out. Does it not? And when it comes out with a vengeance. Right? And so the first unhealthy action for anger management is repression. The second is active aggression. Active aggression. And active aggression is a self-preserving stand for personal worth, needs, and convictions at someone else's expense. And this action, this active aggression, includes explosiveness, rage, intimidation, and blame. And there are always serious consequences following aggressive action when associated with anger. Okay? But a subcategory of active aggression is what we call redirected aggression. What would we mean by the term redirected aggression?
Take it from one situation and put it in another.
One person to another. Same concept. You redirect your anger from one person to another. Your spouse. Your things didn't go well at work. You didn't get the promotion you expected to get. In fact, you felt dissed. And you go home and guess who gets it? Your spouse. Or your kids. Or your parents. Or whoever. We're redirecting our anger towards somebody else. A lot of times, and I just say this as a side note, a lot of times young women have this problem when they get married. They redirect the anger they have towards their father to their husband. And you know, eventually after a while, the husband will figure this out and say, wait a minute, I'm not your father. I know you're angry with your father. I know that you're angry the way he dealt with you, but please don't take it out on me. Is this making sense to you? Redirected anger. If you're going to be angry and if you're going to attack somebody, at least attack the person that should be attacked. I mean, that's not even healthy, but you know what I'm talking about. Don't take it out on somebody else. And the problem is usually when we do it, we don't even realize we're doing it. We're doing it because we're angry inside, and who usually gets it? The one we love the most. Isn't that sad? But that's the way it happens. Okay?
Why does it happen?
I think it happens that way because we feel comfortable with that person and we feel like we can let our guard down, but we don't do it in the right way. We're not doing it in the right way. And so this redirected anger can cause all kinds of havoc in relationships. Okay? And then the third action that displays unhealthy anger management is passive aggression. First you had repression, then you had active aggression, and third you have passive aggression. I want to read you some stuff about passive aggression here that I think will help you understand it. Sometimes people have made a conscious decision not to give in to fits of rage or outwardly aggressive behaviors. They may realize how damaging this can be to relationships and understand that it's not founded in biblical principles. However, they have not released their desire to control the situation or to make the other person pay. Did you hear what I just said? The passive-aggressive person may be pleasant and cooperative on the outside, but they give vent to their anger in subtle ways. Passive aggression is different from repression in that those with repressed anger are shielding themselves with denial. They're acting like they're really not mad. But passively aggressive people, on the other hand, realize they're angry. They simply choose to try to maintain control in ways that make them the least vulnerable. Passive-aggressive people assume it's too risky to be open, so they frustrate others by subtle sabotage. The need for control is evidence of a strong competitive spirit, whereas healthy relationships do not keep score regarding right and wrong. The passive-aggressive person is out to win. Like the openly aggressive person, the passive-aggressive person is engaged in a battle for superiority. But this person has cleverly realized that too much honesty about personal differences lessens his or her ability to maintain an upper hand. In contrast, sly forms of handling anger tend to keep him or her in the driver's seat. Passive-aggressive people may gossip and spread damaging stories, forget to do what they promised, refuse to cooperate, make put-down or embarrassing comments when others can't respond, or leave other person's property where it just happens to be damaged or stolen. Children fail in school, and adults have extramarital affairs to get back at their parents or spouses. Other typical passive-aggressive behaviors include silence, pouting, stubbornness, burning the dinner, being habitually late, procrastination, and laziness. Passive-aggressive behavior does not resemble the explosion of gunpowder or the eruption of a volcano. Therefore, passive-aggressive people often deny that they're angry, and even though they know they are, they deny it, and persuade themselves that they're hurting no one. In actuality, their anger is as destructive as the explosive kind, if not more so. The deceptive, contorted, indirect aggression these people turn towards others is more like the relentless eating away of a bath in corrosive acid than the concussion of a bomb blast. What lies do we believe when we choose passive aggressiveness as our method for responding to anger? We have wrongly concluded that following Paul's admonition, "In your anger do not sin," means simply to not express our anger through exploding or raging. We believe the lie that underhanded expressions of anger are acceptable. If we recognize ourselves as passive aggressive, we must acknowledge that our behavior is equally disturbing to the Lord, and we must own it as sinful and unacceptable. The passive aggressive person does not explode. They keep it in and make you wish they would explode. And we've all met people like that, have we not? And they think that they're not sinning, because they think to be angry and sin and to be angry and sin is to explode. The explosion's not the anger, right? So quiet people can be just as angry and just as damaging as explosive people. Any questions? It's true. And so, but here's the thing, some of us were, in our family of origin, were taught to function that way, to be passively aggressive. And we're going to get back at people in our time, in our way, when they least expect it. See? So those are 3 unhealthy anger management actions: repression, active aggression, and passive aggression. Any questions or comments on any of those?
Do you have a story about how you if you confronted anyone with passive aggression about their anger?
Me. That's the way I was trained. I was trained to keep it in and not explode and get back. Okay? And so I had to confront me. When I finally got to the place of trying to become healthy, I had to come to grips with the fact that that is not a healthy way to operate, and how hurtful and damaging it is to other people. Okay? And am I free from it? Probably 98%. But every now and then I'll still sense that desire to operate that way. Why? It was ingrained in me. Okay? But I refuse it and won't allow myself to operate that way. But to this day, that's why my wife is still saying to me, tell me how you feel. Do you know how hard it is to tell somebody how you feel when you've never been trained to know how you feel? I can see some of you understand what I'm talking about. Here's our answer. I don't know. Why are you mad? I'm not mad. Because we've never learned to come to grips with our feelings. Yes.
So then, if you come to a point where like you can't keep moving forward, like in ministry, with like this passive aggressive person on your team, you don't have the authority to remove them, but you confront them. What do you do?
Well, first of all, do you even have the power to confront them?
If they're a coworker, not that any of mine are.
Alright, Sarah.
I just think I just found the passive aggressive person. But is there a way that you can, like, if they're on the same level as you? Because like in the past, I have like at my previous church, I was in like this moment, calm down. Like, they're at the same level as me, but like I didn't know what to say exactly.
Well, I mean, the only way you can approach them is to just share with them how you're feeling about how you're feeling about them. You're feeling about their feeling. Does that make sense? In other words, you can't say you're passive aggressive.
Yeah.
You can't say the way you function is not right. you have to say, I'm feeling that you are having a hard time sharing your feelings with me. Am I right? The problem is, most of the time they won't share that you're right. Because they're trained to hold it in.
So then what's the cure for the passive aggressive person? Do you ignore them? Do you avoid them?
Punch them.
Punch them. What do you do?
In reality, the person over the department needs to deal with it. Okay. Does that always happen? No. Okay. In fact, it seldom does. I think that the best answer to that, Sierra, would be keep your distance. Just keep your distance. Because until they're ready to confront it themselves and deal with it, they are some of the hardest people to deal with. Passive aggressive people are some of the hardest people to deal with. Because you don't know where they stand. You know where the one who blows up stands. Because they've told you. You know what they're thinking. You don't know what the passive aggressive person is thinking. And your perception could even be wrong.
Yeah, in fact, that's something that as you keep your distance, you should avoid allowing your own perception or your own prediction of what they're actually thinking, and then you create scenarios and then
Sure.
you become angry and it's both of you are passive aggressive now. And it's I feel like it's very silently contagious that when you're trying to figure out that one person's problem without either choosing to confront or to distance yourself, it affects you in a way that you wouldn't expect.
Right. And I'm not saying you shouldn't confront.
Yeah.
But I am saying that the chances of it turning out well is slim. Is slim. And so then you just have to distance yourself as much as you can. Okay. See here, well, we're going to talk about forgiveness in a few minutes. And forgiveness enters into this whole concept that we're dealing with right now. Any other questions or comments?
What's the correct way to deal with anger? I mean, I know it's confronting the person in a healthy way, but how do you
You mean if you're angry?
Yeah.
Well, the healthy way is to be upfront in a nice way. Don't attack. Okay. Don't try to push your way, but be honest and sincere with your feelings and confront. Remember, we're talking about that sometimes we have a tendency to cause conflict because we're not confronting in the right way. Okay. And whenever you're accusing, you're confronting in the wrong way. Whenever you're looking down, whenever you're seeming to have a persona that causes that person to make it look like that person is less than, you're sinning. Okay. You need to confront every situation with the knowledge that you have blind spots too. Okay. And so you can come to that person saying, we have an issue between us. And I know that there's some tension here. And I am perceiving that it's based here. But I know I have blind spots. Can we discuss this? Can we talk about it? Can we try to bring some resolution to it? And then their response determines whether you can or not. But the healthy way is to confront it in love. Remember that scripture? Speak the truth in love. Okay. The problem is some people don't want the truth. And when you find somebody that doesn't want the truth, do them and yourself a favor and find some distance. Sierra, your question brought up a very important point that I want to bring out for those of you going into ministry and in leadership. what I find is that too many spiritual leaders see things happening in the people in their ministry, and they don't deal with it. Just like you were saying a few minutes ago, it's your peer. And I said, the person over the department needs to deal with it. What I'm finding is most people don't, but they should. Because if they're not dealing with it, let's say, Sierra, you got a problem with somebody that's passive aggressive or whatever. By me not dealing with it, I'm abusing you because I'm letting them abuse you. And so may I say that, and I'm not saying this from having done it right and perfect in 50 years of ministry. I failed in it many times because sometimes we don't want to deal with it. We think, well, it'll take care of itself. You know, one of them will kill the other one before it's over and it'll take care. But it's my responsibility. Why? God put me in charge. See? And so when you're in charge and you see it happening in your department, when you do what you should do in that situation, you know what the people like, and Sierra brought up the question, I'm using her as the one that's right in this situation. You know what Sierra would be thinking or saying? Finally, they saw it and did something about it. You see, until that happens, the people like Sierra are sitting there thinking, when is somebody going to do something about this? Because it's hampering our productivity. It's hampering our ministry. So, any other questions or comments on that?
How do you bring that one person up to your leader without it, like, you're paddling?
Yeah. The answer to that depends on your leader. If you have a leader that really has everybody's best interest at heart, you can do that without them thinking you're tattling. But if they don't want to deal with things, the easiest thing for them to do is think, well, you're just a troublemaker. You're just, take care of it yourself. Okay. So it goes to the character and the heart of the leader. In other words, and I'll just use Sierra as an example since she's the one that brought it. Let's say that she come to me and she brought a situation to me and said, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I'm not trying to cause a problem. But I feel like we have a problem. And since you're the one in charge, I want to bring it to you and just share my heart. And if you think I'm wrong, let me know. See, that's the right way to approach it. I'm going to listen to her. And it's either going to confirm what I've already been seeing, or it's going to cause me to say, well, I need, and I would say to her, if I hadn't seen it yet, I'd say to her, well, Sierra, thank you for bringing that to me. I'll start watching the situation. Okay? But it goes to the heart and the leadership ability of the person over the department. So there's really no concrete answer to that question. If you have somebody over the department that doesn't want to deal with problems, they're going to think you're a troublemaker. Why? You're causing them a problem. Right? So you need to, number one, make sure you do it in the right way again, just like I said. I wanted to bring it to your attention, and maybe I'm not seeing it correctly, and if I'm not, please. And who knows? Maybe the leader knows the situation, but already knew that, but put you guys together because they felt you could help that person. And at least they would be able to say, I'm aware of the situation. And I'm praying that he or she will change. But I really feel like you can help them, and that's why I put you together. I don't want to put anything undue on, and if you don't think you can handle it, you let me know. I mean, you don't know what's going on, you see. So, anyway. But see, Lexi, you brought up a real good point, and that is, what do you take to your leader and what don't you take to your leader?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that, in a large way, goes to what we talked about last week. Is your leader a Saul or is your leader a David? Or is your leader an immature David? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because nobody's perfect, right? And so I think the real answer to your question, the more I've been talking about it, the more I think the real answer to your question is a lot of it has to do with your relationship with your leader. Because we should be ministering through relationship, right? And if you already have a rocky situation with your leader, it's probably not going to go well. But if you have a smooth, close relationship with your leader, at least they're going to listen to you without thinking that you're trying to cause trouble. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. What time's it getting to be? 8:30. Okay. Let's talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key to proper anger management. Forgiveness is the key to proper anger management. But the enemy, or our own rationalization, will lie to us to keep us from walking in forgiveness. Isn't that true? And some of these lies are, let me give you 3 of them. 3 lies the enemy will tell you to keep you from walking in forgiveness. Number 1, here's one lie. I can't forgive because the offender did it on purpose, isn't even sorry, and is going to probably do it again. I can't forgive because the offender did it on purpose, isn't even sorry, and is probably going to do it again. Now that's a lie. You say, well, how do you know it's a lie? Maybe they aren't sorry and maybe they are going to do it again. Well, here's the lie. Here's the part that's the lie. The truth is that forgiveness is dependent on us alone and has nothing to do with the offender. That's the truth. Right? Forgiveness is dependent on us alone and has nothing to do with the offender. In other words, I can forgive you even if you do it again. It's a choice I make. Here's another lie the enemy tries to put in your head. I can't forgive because I just don't feel like it. I can't forgive because I just don't feel like it. But the truth is that forgiveness is an act of our will. It's not an emotion. And then number 3. This is the third lie. And this is the one that you hear more than any other. I can't forgive because I'll never be able to forget. You ever heard somebody say that?
Yeah.
I can't forgive because I'll never be able to forget. But the truth is, listen carefully to me, we can forgive yet still remember the offense. As an example, let's say Isaiah comes to me and says, Pastor, I got this great financial deal. You invest $1,000, you invest $20,000 into this, and by the end of the year, you'll have $200,000 come back to you. And I invest $20,000 and lose it all. We've got an issue. But there comes a point where, as a Christian, I have to forgive Isaiah. Why? It's my responsibility. Now, I may struggle with it, but I finally have to forgive him.
I will never do business with you.
But I'm not going to forget it. Because if he comes to me next year and says, hey, I've got another good deal, this one will really work, I'll say, Why? I forgave you, but I haven't forgotten. Can you see the difference? Now, here's what we really, oftentimes we really mean by, have you ever heard the statement, well, it isn't really forgiveness if you haven't forgotten? You heard people say that? Well, you haven't really forgiven me if you don't forget. Well, I just showed you where that's not true. But here's where it becomes a problem. When we act like we have forgiven, but not forgotten, and then we keep bringing it up. If you keep bringing it up, you haven't forgiven. Does that make sense? I can forgive without forgetting, but if I keep bringing it up, I haven't forgiven. Does that make sense? And so you know, and see, I was raised in a family. They said I was forgiven, but then 6 months later they bring it up again. Or remember when you did such. And so you learn that you think that's the way everybody operates. I'll never forget the time when I was over some interns over at another church over here, and I had to bring them in to discipline them because they had done something wrong. Had to bring them in and discipline them. And I dealt with them. I told them what the problem was. This is what the punishment was going to be. And then I said, now, and they were very remorseful. And I said, I can tell that you're remorseful, but we're still going to have the consequences, not the punishment, but the consequences to what you did. But I said, I can make this promise to you that because of your admitting your sin and being remorseful over it, this is the last time you will ever hear this from me. It's like their jaw dropped that they couldn't believe that I wouldn't be bringing it up to them the rest of their time around there. Why? They've been trained to bring it up again, bring it up again, bring it up again. And we need to get over that. If you really forgive, you're not going to keep bringing it up. In fact, I will never bring it up to Isaiah unless he tries to get me in another deal.
I also think that it gets misconstrued, the line between like forgiveness and like guarding your heart. The Bible says guard your heart. I think a lot of people feel like walking a fine line between that. So they don't forgive because they feel like that's not guarding their heart, or you know, they forgive but don't forget, but really don't forgive because they believe they're guarding their heart, or they act irrationally because they think it's that, but really it's just unforgiveness.
Okay.
I think a lot of people too think that forgiveness means that you're letting yourself get walked on. Yeah. So a lot of people are slow to forgive because of that. They're afraid of being hurt again.
Okay. That's true. I mean, these are all true, you know.
Me too.
But and let's talk about this getting walked on for just a minute. how do I want to say this? What I'm wanting to verbalize, what I'm wanting to say is, a lot of times people think that if they give in or they forgive or whatever, the other people will think they won. And here's my response to that. Oh, well.
Yeah.
They can think what they want. Doesn't make me their rug. I'm not going to let it get inside me. Okay? I don't care what they think. By me forgiving, I win. Right? And they go away gloating because they, okay, oh well, you know. But I'm not going to stoop to where they are. Okay? So forgiveness is not an option for Christians, it's a must. We have to forgive. Let's talk about it just a little bit further. I just said it's not an option, it's a must. And that is a true statement, correct? Have you ever heard somebody at church stand up and say from the pulpit, if you don't forgive others, God won't forgive you? Now, first of all, is that true? Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. It is true. The scripture says it. The Lord says, if you don't forgive others, neither will I forgive you. But the way in which they say it is wrong. It gives a wrong connotation. Here's why. Because when they stand up in front of people, you got to understand that when you stand up in front of people and make a statement, oftentimes you're putting more condemnation on people than they walked in the door with. Let me give you an example. Let's say that somebody out there, I'm just using this as a wild, but it's not wild when you know society. Let's say that there's women out there who have been raped, forcibly raped. And you stand up and you say, if you don't forgive others, God can't forgive you. What does that do to them? Because they're struggling with the damage of having been raped and they've not been able to forgive that person. It causes them to walk out saying, what's the use of me even trying? Because I can't forgive that person, God will not forgive me. You see how it works? Remember the scripture, the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. Okay? Please don't ever stand up and make that broad statement. Even though it's scripture. And I'm not saying you shouldn't even preach on it. You need to preach on it, but you need to preach on it in the right context. And here's the way we need to preach on it. Forgiveness is a choice. And each of us have to make that choice. But it's also a process. Because sometimes things happen to us unjustly and wrongly through no fault of our own. And we need the help of the Holy Spirit and we need the help of the church to walk through that process of forgiveness. And we as the church are here to help you walk through that process to where you can make the choice. Here's why, guys. The church does a much better job of giving hope to the sinner than they do of giving hope to the sinned against. And what do I mean by that? We do a much better job by giving hope to the sinner. What do we say to the sinner? It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter who you've harmed. It doesn't even matter if you've committed murder. If you come to Jesus, He will forgive you. And He will. But if we're not careful, we say to the sinned against, if you don't forgive, God won't forgive you. we need to help the sinned against understand that we understand that sometimes they face things that's going to take a process for them to get to where they can forgive. But we are with them for the long haul to help them through that process. Does that make sense? So while forgiveness is a choice and it happens at a moment in time, it's also a process that gets us to that choice. And we need to love people into that process and work with people into that process. Is this making sense to you? That's why when you pastor and lead a church, you need to realize that sometimes there's people out there who haven't forgiven themselves for things they have done. Abortions, other things, and we need to walk with them and help them instead of put condemnation on them. Right? Okay. Any questions? Okay, let me give you two more things here, two more concepts, and then we'll call it a night. What actions display healthy anger management? What actions display healthy anger management? There's two actions here that display healthy anger management. Number one is assertive anger. Assertive anger. This is to assert yourself at the risk of personal loss to resolve the issue. To assert yourself at the risk of personal loss in order to resolve the issue. It's not aggressive, but it's assertive. Let me read to you a few verses. Let's read them out of here instead of out of the Bible. Be quicker that way. Listen to Matthew 5:23 and 24. Matthew 5:23 and 24. Therefore, if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer the gift. Matthew 18:15. Matthew 18:15. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault just between the two of you. If he listens, you have won your brother over. Assertive anger. And then Ephesians 4:15. Ephesians 4:15. Speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into him who is the head, that is Christ. So assertive anger is to assert yourself at the risk of possible loss in order to resolve the situation. Okay, so in order to do that, let me give you some steps to do for doing that. Okay, steps for doing that. Number one, if you're going to use assertive anger, number one, define your expectations. What do you hope to accomplish in confronting? You want to reevaluate, is this issue serious enough to warrant a confrontation, or is it basically too trivial? What response do you expect? So you need to, if you're going to be assertive in your anger, you need to, number one, define your expectations. What are you hoping to achieve? Number two, be clear and kind in your speech. Be clear and kind in your speech. Focus on tasks, behavior issues, and events without becoming personal. Thirdly, if you're going to be assertive in your anger, watch your body language. Have you ever seen that person who they don't even have to say anything, their face says it all?
I'm that person.
Are you that person?
I am very much that. That's probably my biggest thing, Pastor Michelle. Your face. I'm like, sorry, I'm just thinking. I mean it. But yes, I'm very much that person.
Yeah, watch your body language. They say that only 7% of a communication is through the spoken word. 38% is through the tone of voice. And 58% is expressed through nonverbal behavior, like facial expressions and body position and movement.
My mom always asks, "Are you happy?" And then if you say yes, she always says, "Well, tell your face." And she's like, "I got that all the time."
Yeah.
She's the same way.
Fourthly, if you're going to use assertive anger, consider the other person's feelings. Consider the other person's feelings. Avoid you statements. Instead, put things in the I mode. In other words, I feel rejected. I am upset. I'm having a hard time with this. Rather than you. And the fifth thing, if you're going to use assertive anger, is avoid defensiveness. Avoid defensiveness. Don't get defensive, even if the other person does. Expect that he or she will defend themselves. Most people haven't learned any better. But don't get drawn into an argument. Just quietly repeat your request for change. So when it comes to healthy anger management, healthy actions that display healthy anger management, number one is assertive anger. Number two is dropping anger. Dropping anger. That doesn't mean we stuff it, but we choose to release it through forgiveness. And this only happens through maturity. Just let it go. I don't know how many times I've taught this, and there's always people saying, "How do you do that?" You just let it go. It's not worth the destruction to you and to others. You let it go. I choose to not be angry. I heard a story years ago of an older pastor, and one day a younger pastor came up to him and said, "I need to learn something from you." He said, "I've watched you for years." He said, "I've seen people get right in your face and just chew you out, and you don't get mad. How do you keep from getting angry?" And his statement was, "Oh, it's simple. I just don't accept it. I don't let it in." Same thing with dropping it. You just drop it. It's not worth the destruction that it's going to cause internally, as well as to relationships. And the last concept I want to deal with tonight is what are some preventive strategies to practice before and during an anger episode? What are preventive strategies before and after an anger episode? Number one, strengthen yourself. Strengthen yourself. In other words, work on personal growth and maturity. If you're strong emotionally and you're mature, and you have worked on those areas of your life, it's going to help you before and during an anger episode. You've done your homework before. See, the problem with too many people is they do their homework after. Strengthen yourself. Work on personal growth and maturity. Number two, some preventing strategies to practice before and during an anger episode. Clarify your goals. Clarify your goals. Here's some questions you can ask yourself in learning how to clarify your goals. I'm going to go through them quickly. You won't have time to write them. You can just think about it. Number one, do I enjoy getting angry? Or would I rather deny it and repress it? When I'm angry, do I want to be in full control of my behavior? Or do I want to act spontaneously? If I want to be in control, am I willing to spend the energy that's required to stay ahead of my action? Am I willing to foster meekness in my life? Am I willing to turn control over to the Lord? What do I think about explosive and impulsive acts when I'm angry? Am I prone to anger, active aggression? When I get angry with people, how do I want to end up with them? Where do I stand on sulking and pouting, on passive aggression? Am I willing to remain unaware of my anger sometimes? Am I willing to drop it? Knowing how attached I am to behaviors that produce immediate gratification, what is my position with regard to short-term gains and long-term losses? What is my position on hostility and hate? Overall, what do I want the outcome of my anger to be? So clarify your goals. What are you looking for? Number three, it's a good one. Read your inner radar. Read your inner radar. In other words, learn to stay in touch with your feelings. Try to catch anger feelings the moment they begin. Number four, think. Think. The mind is the battlefield, so change your way of thinking. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So in the midst of an anger, before an anger episode and in the midst of one, think. Process. Don't just react, but act. Have you figured out yet that action is better than reaction? Number five, leave your past behind. Leave your past behind. Don't deny your past, but don't react based on it. Don't deny your past, but don't react based on it. Questions and comments? Thoughts?
I like what you said about don't do your homework
after.
After's too late. You know, do your work ahead of time. Think ahead of time. Clarify your goals ahead of time. Work on your spiritual and emotional maturity ahead of time. Anything else? What I'd like to do before we go tonight is I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to have each of you share one thing that you have learned during these 3 weeks so far that you think has impacted you more than anything else. Doesn't mean you've mastered it, but it's impacted you more than anything else. Don?
I got started.
Yeah.
I think the illustration of the orange, just seeing conflict as, most of the conflict I deal with is either with the public in my job. I work for San Joaquin County. Usually they're pretty angry at the government. Or, I have people under me that I manage. So conflict for me is probably different than a lot of you guys, but it's, the way I've dealt with it is this is what's gone wrong and this is what we're going to do to fix it. With very little concern as to how they feel about it. With the public, it's more like, no, this is the law. This is what we do. This is what I'm not going to do for you. As opposed to how can I actually help this person or at least make them feel helped by me. And kind of dealing with coworkers and subordinates. Trying to understand how they might be feeling about the situation and what do they really want out of it. I never stop to think, the orange illustration, it's what do they really want? We might want the same thing or
Right.
might be able to both get something that we want here if I stop to think about that instead of just, hard line, no, this is the way we're going to be.
Right. Okay, good. Josh?
Yeah, I've learned a lot, but I don't know. Sometimes conflict seems random a lot of times for me. Obviously it's avoidable, like don't pee on the toilet seat. But like
I heard that wrong.
no, you didn't.
No, you didn't hear it
No,
right.
I'm pretty sure I
No.
said don't pee on the toilet seat. I heard it wrong. Okay, I knew I heard it wrong. Never mind. Moving on.
Yeah. I mean, for me, best thing is just talk it out. Like passive aggressive people, like sometimes you confront them and they'll be very like push it on you. Sometimes like, I can't stand passive aggressive people. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know a lot, but a lot of it is just like, because you have your emotions, right? Like you're mad, you're confused, you're like trying to like figure it out. A lot of the time, like a lot of people see their side and not like, you want them to see your side or like vice versa. So, I mean, in managing that, like good luck, but I'm sure it's a lot of it comes to knowing the person and
Relationship.
yeah, like, that's pretty much it. Like you kind of have to hopefully be in good relationship with these people.
Okay, good. Genesis?
I feel like I tend to just probably create more inner conflict, like something happens and I take it too much to heart and personal, rather than just see the objective and be like, okay, that's not what this person or the situation is intending it to be, but because I feel everything more like, oh, what is that? Like I just kind of like create more inner conflict with myself rather than what's actually going on.
Okay, so you tend to internalize it
Yeah.
all. Okay. And, well, so you're learning some skills
Yeah.
to not do that. Okay, good. Sierra.
One thing that I think really made a huge impact on me is learning what my conflict management styles are and being able to like find the strengths and weaknesses of those styles, because I'm the type of person that in order to understand when I'm learning, I have to like see it in front of me, like this is literally me, like it's literally what I do. And now that I know my weaknesses and my strengths, and begin to build on my strengths and like keep an eye out for my weaknesses, and also being able to like identify conflict strategies in other people, like my students, for example. So that leads to like better communication when I'm giving direction or I'm sometimes addressing a problem or correction of some sort. I know how to manage it. I know how to talk to them and communicate with them because I know how they're going to take it. I know how I need to word it, and I'm now aware of how sharp I can be sometimes with delivering correction and everything like that. So I think the whole thing with conflict management styles is really helpful for me in my ministry and my personal life.
Good.
I'm a little kind of like Genesis. I deal with a lot of internal conflict, and I am now trying to not think like someone that says something to me or someone that does something that I kind of see that might affect me. I need to not take it in a way that is not true to their character and it's not what they would do. And I need to let my mind not think that way. Because I have that problem where I think some person is thinking a certain way when they're not thinking that at all. So I'm trying to train myself to not think that way.
Can you guys see how that sometimes our conflict management style is also tied to our personality?
Yeah.
Because what Genesis and Devin have both shared right now also speaks to a melancholy personality. and so our conflict, it's tied to our family of origin, but it's also tied to our personality. I think our giftings and callings are tied to our personality. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. I see a great connection there. That's why I teach on personality so much. I see it affect all these areas of life. So, okay. Thanks.
I think for me, when I hear the word conflict, my brain automatically went to argument. And I think I realized, I know that I realized that I deal with a lot of internal conflicts because I don't like conflict. I don't know if anybody does, but personally, I don't like conflict. And so if I could keep the peace per se, as much as possible, I do. And so I just pretend like it doesn't exist. And then I base my life off of perceptions of like what I think people think, And so I think just learning to know when to speak up, because I don't feel like it's healthy to always speak up about our anger, but or our opinions, but also it's not healthy to never. And so learning that middle ground of when to speak up and when to internalize it, but I primarily internalize, and then I get frustrated when I don't see my opinions acted out, or what I think should have happened doesn't happen. And so just learning healthy ways of letting people know about how I'm feeling.
Okay, good. Chase?
Well, like Lexi, I grew up not expressing the way I feel and stuff and avoiding conflict. And I internalized a lot of it, and then it all comes out at once, and it's kind of like the redirecting anger. Like it all comes out on the wrong person, because I haven't built up from so long. So just learning and using these ways to be able to confront it as it's happening, and when I see it happening, like my conflicts and stuff, and being able to talk about it then and there, rather than waiting and letting it boil over and me overthinking things and overcomplicating things.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I agree a lot, Lexi, also, but just so that I don't say the same thing. Okay. I've learned a lot of good stuff. But a big thing for me that I know I need to work on, which is a lot of confidence that I need to work on, but is the who-ness and what-ness. And especially for someone like me that likes, not necessarily likes to avoid, but does avoid a lot of things, just because it's just easier. Like, I feel like it's easier, but then it kind of, then like Lexi said, like, you don't feel like your opinion, it matters because you don't speak it out. But realizing that, especially like in ministry and stuff, that a lot of even outside ministry, a lot of problems aren't what they appear to be. A lot of times they're like something that's just like, I don't know, kind of like killing behind the scenes something else. But realizing that those problems are like this relationship, or problems with students, parents, or even students, where this thing is something that's about like, let me figure out how this affects me and you, instead of like they're doing it to personally hurt me, but really there's just a problem there between you and that person, and it's not. I don't know if that makes sense. I think it makes sense, but in my head it makes sense, but how I'm saying it doesn't make sense. But that just, there's always something like behind. There's always a bigger picture than what's spoken a lot of times. And so realizing that you want to go to the source and what's really going on, instead of taking the offense, or realizing that like a parent feels this way because they're a parent and they care about their kids, instead of feeling like they just want to attack me, or something like that. So I think just identifying and like making a distinct choice in your head, or difference in your head, that it's more about this than this, and not just taking it for what it seems like, or what I want to be offended by, or what I feel like because I'm being sensitive, they want to attack me, but really like what the problem is, and who I'm dealing with, and that it's not cookie cutter thing all the time, but it's like
We can't always take everything personal. Yeah. Okay.
So naturally I'm an avoider, and so I tend to avoid any type of confrontation at all. And he's the opposite of me, but he loves to confront. But naturally, I think what I learned the most out of this is like how to deal with a situation when it comes to confrontation. I naturally avoid it, but I can do it. Is it my favorite thing? No, and I don't think it's anyone's favorite thing to do. But like just the examples of the steps that you gave us, like when you go into a situation, or go in like to find the expectations, what do you want to solve in the situation, and stuff like that. And so I think I'm just more in a sense just learning how to deal when it comes to confrontation. But yeah.
Okay.
What he said about the orange pillar and orange splitter. I was raised to shoot first and ask questions later, and so that's how I approach things. Like, I'm gonna deal with it, and then we'll get to the root later. But this is the main issue right now. So understanding what both sides, like understanding where my hurt or my issue is, and also theirs.
Okay. Good. Well, we're making progress, and we are a work in progress. And my prayer is that these concepts will help you through life and ministry, and make you a better minister of His gospel. You doing okay on your homework for the class, right? We'll have it all done. Good. I'm through tonight. We started a few minutes early. I'm through. How's that sound?